I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
Donald Trump finds himself in another covfefe situation where he posts something embarrassing and has to walk it back. But instead of an inside joke, this time he seems to have posted what was meant to be a private DM to Attorney General Pam Bondi, where he demands that she goes after Comey, Schiff, and Letitia James in what is clearly an illegal use of the executive power. Now, you might have seen this first reported over the weekend as something Trump posted and then deleted, but it appears to be back onto his Truth Social account. So at first, I wasn't sure if I actually even wanted to report on this because it's not exactly clear if he meant this to be a private message. I mean, Lord knows Trump has no problem with his criminality being in just the open air. But over the last couple of days, with how Trump went on to behave after posting this and how the White House is scrambling to come up with an excuse for it, it seems more likely than ever that this was an accidental post. So we're going to read this under the assumption that he meant this as a private message. Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that, essentially, same old story as last time. All talk, no action, nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is being done. Now, when he says he's reviewed 30 statements and posts, I think he literally means Truth Social posts, like he was scrolling on Truth Social and saw people complaining about it. Then, we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him, and there is a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Okay, so in that section, he's clearly talking about U.S. Attorney Eric Seibert, who refused to charge New York AG Letitia James. There's a whole quitting and no, you can't quit, I'm firing you thing happening with him and Trump right now, but essentially, it boils down to the fact that Seibert did an investigation of Letitia James, and they were unable to find incriminating evidence of mortgage fraud against James, according to sources, despite the fact that Trump and the White House continue to rail against the fact that she's clearly guilty of some sort of fraud and there's all of this evidence. This next sentence, I think, is really good evidence that this is meant as a private message. He says, Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. Now, why is he mentioning Lindsay Halligan? Because a couple of hours after that post, he was going to appoint Lindsay Halligan as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, working with Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. He goes on to say, we can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. That's very much true. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. President DJT. I love the fact that this bumbling idiot signs off his own text messages. Now, the first attempt at a cover-up was Trump deleting that first tweet and then tweeting this about an hour later. Pam Bondi is doing a great job as Attorney General of the United States. She is very careful, very smart, and loves our country. Because as it turns out, Trump is 100% correct that MAGA's patience is starting to wear thin with Pam Bondi. Here are all the responses underneath the original tweet. The very first response is somebody with I stand with Trump in their username, and it says, stop talking, start arresting. Here's the next one. For the love of God, just arrest somebody. And of course, get going, Pam, as people call for her being fired. The meme says, unless people start going to prison, the corruption in our government will never stop. Well, that's true. But it's this blowhole who needs to spend time in prison. Here's what he said the same night he sent out that tweet when he was asked about it.
They have to act, and we want to act fast. You know, they were ruthless and vicious. I was impeached twice. I was indicted 5 times. It turned out to be a fake deal, and we have to act fast. One way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty. They're not guilty. We have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty or if they should be charged, they should be charged. And we have to do it now.
Oh, if they're guilty or if they're not guilty, they just have to act fast. But we know from the tweet that he thinks there's a great case against Letitia James. So clearly he thinks they're guilty. And obviously he's not one to give up on a grudge. He even used Charlie Kirk's memorial as a chance to jab at his enemies.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica.
And just a few minutes ago, our press secretary, Caroline Levitt, decided she was going to try to get ahead of this and pretend like what Trump tweeted out was innocuous and not an obvious attempt by Trump to weaponize the DOJ against his political opponents.
The case against Letitia James was extensively investigated for 5 months, and President Trump's handpicked Attorney General Eric Siebert could not find any evidence that he committed a crime. So is the president saying here it doesn't matter if there's a crime, he just wants his political enemies to be charged?
Well, let me just walk you through Letitia James. Letitia James completely abused her oath of office. Letitia James was actively and openly engaged in lawfare. You talk about weaponizing the Department of Justice. What was Letitia James's campaign slogan? It was prosecute Donald Trump. She was saying she was going to prosecute Donald Trump before she even knew if Donald Trump committed a crime, which of course we did not. Those are not the words of a serious prosecutor. Those are the words of a corrupt politician who is abusing their power. She actively campaigned on that. She also led the witch hunt, the financial fraud investigation against President Trump and the Trump Organization, and an appeals court tossed that case out, a $500 million civil fraud penalty in August, which was another win for the president and exonerated him of this witch hunt and showed that this is an individual who is corrupt and abused her oath of office. And we also have evidence of her mortgage fraud. An April report from a white-collar fraud investigator found that there was documented evidence that James engaged in a consistent pattern of financial and property disclosures that raise serious legal questions.
So why won't the president accept the conclusions of his Justice Department to not bring charges against Letitia James? In fact, you had Bondi and Blanche, top DOJ leadership, who were against ousting Eric Siebert, who again was picked by President Trump.
I just answered that question for you, and the president has every right to express how he feels about these people who literally campaigned on trying to put him in jail, who literally tried to ruin his life and ruin his businesses, and he wants to see accountability for those who abuse their office and abuse their power. And Letitia James absolutely did that, whether you want to admit it or not.
Is that not retribution, though?
Jeff, it's accountability.
Thanks,
Jeff.
And I feel like I have to point out that the reason why Pam Bondi isn't arresting these people is because they haven't committed any crimes. These conspiracies start online and then make their way to the president's mouth. But then when nothing happens, the conspiracy theorists start getting pissed off at the president. And now Pam Bondi is stuck between trumping up charges, pun intended, or a bunch of pissed off MAGA morons online who are just begging for her to get fired. Check this out. Hey, Pam Bondi, I know you're busy, but at least half should have been arrested already. And then there's a number of arrests, all saying 0. People in the comments are also equally upset with this. 0, nada, zippo, 0 arrests, none. No indictments. Pam Bondi, please resign. Give the president an AG position to fill. You have not been an effective AG. No one is going to be an effective AG because there's no actual crimes that were committed. There's nothing to charge, but these people are so convinced that the Democrats are involved in some shadowy, illegal, deep state that they can't fathom the idea of just being wrong. Half? Shit, she couldn't even arrest one. Embarrassing. And then it's people asking for the Epstein files. So I'm glad they haven't given up on that one. So I'm not entirely convinced that this was meant as a private message. I mean, I'm sure he has no problem saying all of these things in public. He put the post back up on his Truth Social, so clearly he doesn't care. But in a sane, functional, and healthy democracy, this should be grounds for immediate removal, as Comey, Schiff, and James haven't committed any crimes except for the dire sin of offending dear leader. If you guys want to stay up to date on everything MAGA hates for you to hear, then subscribe to Really American. I'm Tony Hinderman, and I'll catch you next time.